Alright, rather than have this happen in the middle of Patreon month, we'll get this out of the way now. So, welcome everybody to my 300th episode milestone special! Hard to believe I've been making videos for this long, and we're even a couple months away from this show's 10-year anniversary. But to that end, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I originally thought of doing something Warcraft related, since, you know. But then Blizzard did Blizzard things, and I decided against it for the time. Instead, let's complete the circle of life, and look at the prequel to one of the first movies I ever reviewed on this show. The idea for The Lion King came in 1988 when Jeffrey Katzenberg liked the idea of setting a coming-of-age story in Africa, but the film bounced around different producers and directors before its release in 1994. Not helping matters was the production of another Disney film going on at the same time, Pocahontas. Since the animation team assumed that a story steeped in American history was going to be more prestigious and successful, most of the in-house talent decided to work on that movie and not The Lion King, instead consisting of mostly fresh talent. You could probably guess how that turned out. What makes this film's success even more noteworthy is that it has an original story. Yeah, no hard adaptation of anything, just a story about lions. Okay, I might be overstating the originality of the story, but I'll return to that point later. For now, let's get into the 1994 Lion King film. Just saying it right now, this opening sequence is among the best in cinematic history. Not bad for something made with mostly newcomers, wouldn't you say? While the songs were mostly written by Tim Rice, who was working with Alan Menken on Aladdin, Hans Zimmer was able to provide the score with aid from South African producer Lebo Morake. Sorry if I said that wrong. Elton John provided vocals for some of these songs, which is a treat. But most of all, I really dig the musical rhythm and vibe throughout the movie. This scene is a great way to establish the importance and magnificence of a royal heir's birth, for in this part of Africa, the animals pay respect to this one pride of lions led by Mufasa, voiced by Darth Vader. And the way they all come together shows how talented and creative the team was with the lighting, shading, and animal movements. It's visual storytelling at its finest. Without any real dialogue, you're drawn into the animal culture and the world. Speaking of dialogue, one of the first characters to talk is the jealous brother of King Mufasa, Scar, voiced by Jeremy Irons.
You see, I shall never be king. And you shall never see the light of another day. And you...
Didn't your mother ever tell you not to play with your food?
Nice to see Mr. Bean make an appearance in this movie. Yeah, Zazu is the head steward for the royal family, and he often pushes his luck with a freaking lion, despite being a tiny hookbill. In a way, it's justified since Scar has to unwillingly fall in line with his older brother. But I have to wonder why he's kept around when there's a chance he might hurt the royal heir. He's not exactly subtle about how it sucks to be kicked down the line of succession.
Well, I was first in line, until the little hairball was born.
That hairball is my son, and your future king.
Oh, I shall practice my curtsy.
Don't turn your back on me, Scar.
Oh no, Mufasa. Perhaps you shouldn't turn your back on me.
I'm sure nothing bad will come of this. So after a time skip, Rafiki, a shaman voiced by Robert Gilm, shows us a tree painting of the little cub growing up. Simba is now old enough to be voiced by Jonathan Taylor Thomas of Home Improvement fame. And he's just lucky his dad is really tolerant of his son, unlike most lions in real life.
You promised.
Okay. I'm up.
Yeah.
Look, Simba. Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
Wow.
A king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun. One day, Simba, the sun will set on my time here and will rise with you as the new king.
And this'll all be mine?
Everything.
Now, something that's often brought up with The Lion King is how it supposedly took most of its elements from Osamu Tezuka's Jungle Emperor Leo. Disney insisted that any similarities between the two works were coincidental, since they weren't even aware of Leo's existence, despite some of their animators' claims. But on the other side, Yoshihiro Shimizu of Tezuka Productions recalled the pressure to sue despite the obvious risks of a smaller company going into court against a larger, more culturally iconic one like Disney. As someone who had a long-running Leo retrospective back in the day, I will concede that both works deploy similar character archetypes, but there's so much else to it that I don't know for certain if it's really true. Otherwise, it's their main stories that are different from each other. Leo was about a lion cub growing up in human society after losing his father to poachers, and he spends his adult life ruling the animal kingdom peacefully with the important lessons he learned from human culture. The Lion King lacks the presence of human characters altogether, and is really just about growing up and becoming a king. Also, while the Leo anime mostly consisted of innocent cartoony shenanigans that broke animal biology and physics, The Lion King has self-aware animals that still behave as such. Most of the time.
Simba?
Besides, there are other issues this movie has beyond the possible plagiarism.
This time.
Sire! Hyenas! In the Pride Lands!
Back to Simba, he's very enthused about becoming the next king. He even has an entire song to demonstrate that enthusiasm that we'll get to. But he's also very gullible, and he will listen to his uncle about exciting things, like an elephant graveyard.
An elephant what? Whoa.
Oh dear, I've said too much. Well, I suppose you'd have found out sooner or later. You being so clever and all. Oh, just do me one favor. Promise me you'll never visit that dreadful place.
No problem.
There's a good lad. You run along now and have fun. And remember, it's our little secret.
So instead of being responsible by telling them parents about an uncle's secret, Simba decides to share this adventure with his friend Nala, voiced by Nikita Kalame. I want to mention how all the characters apparently had their own animation supervisor, and for characters with child and adult variants, they get double the attention. And Lord knows the process of animating these animals getting cleaned. But again, I like to stress that this movie was mostly done with first-time supervisors. They were able to get a lot of emotion out of these characters while staying faithful to the animal anatomies and the lush environments that surround them. We also get some characterization of Simba, who thinks he can do whatever he wants once he becomes king. Child logic, sure, but that's the sort of thinking that even some adults have to this day. I'm not naming names.
I'm gonna be a mighty king, so enemies beware.
Well, I've never seen a king or beast with quite so little hair.
Now it's like other Disney movies, where singing is a required life skill for everyone. And yes, it is still sung well and has good animation, but I don't think this is the best time to bring out the song and dance. At least not yet. At least Rowan Atkinson gets some funny slapstick in.
I beg your pardon, madam, but get off!
Now that they ditched the dodo, they can go to the rather ominous and scary elephant graveyard. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to two unaccompanied minors.
The only checking out you will do will be to check out of here.
Oh, I guess they're no longer unaccompanied. Guess Simba really has no fear.
Well, Bonsai, what have we got here?
I don't know, Shenzi. What do you think, Ed?
Yep, here are some other problems people have with this movie. Shenji, Bonsai, and Ed are three hyenas that have the misfortune of being this universe's one unequivocally bad animal species. As in, they don't respect the circle of life, even though they aren't that different from other real-life carnivores, so they have to live where the sun don't shine. And with Whoopi Goldberg, Richard Barron, and Jim Cummings voicing this trio, critics believe they reflect negative stereotypes with people of color. Their darker fur also doesn't help matters, despite having their designs come from the spotted hyena. I know. The Lion Guard tried to address this problem by having a group of good guy hyenas, but that doesn't totally make up for what we see here. Still, they are pretty scary, and if they didn't have that stigma, this would be a good example of how predators in their world would act when not socializing.
That was it? Do it again.
Well, they tried. Well, Nala at least will get scolded by her mother, who may or may not be sleeping with Mufasa. This raises so many questions. Does this pride act like the ones in real life, where the dominant male owns all the children and their mothers? Is there a harem that the audience doesn't know about? It might be, given that Scar is the only other on-screen male lion. But before my mind fully enters the gutter, here's Mufasa talking about endangering yourself and others.
Simba, being brave doesn't mean you go looking for trouble.
But you're not scared of anything.
I was today.
You were?
Yes. I thought I might lose you.
Oh. I guess even kings get scared, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But you know what?
What?
I think those hyenas were even scarier.
'Cause nobody messes with your dad. Come here, you.
Wow, a slight slap on the paw and punishment over! On the plus side, I do like most of the spiritual talk they have going on involving the circle of life, and how they're all connected to each other even in death. It's not just uplifting, but that might even be a dark side in us all. Reading into how the lions describe the circle of life, some might see this as some kind of justification for a strict hierarchy where the weak must serve the strong, with apex predators ruling over weaker meat-eaters and herbivores. And I hate to admit it, but yeah, I kinda see that. I mean, besides the way the hyenas are portrayed, you get fantastic casual speciesism like...
Low to the ground.
Cheetahs never prosper.
And while you could brush that aside as just this film's take on the animal food chain, it's still hard not to see the lions as an insular elite that jealously guards its privilege from most outsiders. This is where Scar takes advantage of it. He enlists the aid of the hyenas, and he reveals his objectives through a really well-made villain song.
I know that your powers of retention are as wet as a warthog's backside. But thick as you are, pay attention. My words are a matter of pride. It's clear from your vacant expression. The lights are not all on upstairs. But we are talking kings and successions. Even you can't be caught unawares.
Now again, I have to wonder how this movie would have fared without the song sequences. But for what it's worth, the villain song is another highlight for me. I love how the fire and landscape move and act in lockstep with Scar's voice, and Jeremy Irons has great delivery per usual. Of course, at some point, he blows out his voice, and Jim Cummings has to come to the rescue.
Is simply why I'll be king undisputed, respected, saluted, and seen for the wonder I am. Yes, my teeth and ambitions are bad. Be prepared.
There's obvious fascist imagery with Scar's sequence, but again, if you're one of those animals unlucky enough to be outside of the royal family circle, you'd think their high-minded rhetoric about the circle of life was just a facade, a fancy schmancy way for the lions to justify keeping the power to themselves and their children.
Be prepared.
At any rate, Scar's plan now is to have Simba wait out in the middle of this canyon for a surprise, and something about brushing up his roar while he's here. The hyenas are to scare this herd of wildebeest, thus starting one of the more intense scenes to play out in the movie. It also makes for a really aggravating stage in the video game adaptations. Scar brings Mufasa here and knocks out Zazu before he gets suspicious. Ideally, this whole plan seems to depend on both Simba and his father dying, but Mufasa's far too badass to die like this, so Scar lends him a paw.
Long live the king.
And it's also followed by a really sad moment.
Help! Somebody! Anybody!
Simba, what have you done?
Nothing, actually. As far as he knows, this was a complete accident beyond his control. Even Simba knows this. But in a devilishly cruel move, Scar convinces Simba that he is responsible for all this, and that he should run away from home, since there's no telling what the rest of the family will do to him. And since he's a kid, of course the trauma will spiral out of control and forever warp him into guilt. Thus he's forced into exile. If he can survive the chase.
Kill him.
Oh well, at least you tried.
And if he comes back, we'll kill him.
Yeah! You hear that? If you ever come back, we'll kill ya!
In fairness, a cub would not be able to survive on his own, unless his name was Kimba. Scar breaks the news that both Mufasa and Simba are dead, and then takes his place as the next king. The part of Simba's death would have been true, if not for comic relief ex machina.
Buzzards!
Meet Timon and Pumbaa, voiced by Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella. They'll be our Coco and Tommy for this flick. They only attacked those buzzards out of boredom, but Pumbaa has to convince Timon to take in Simba.
He's gonna get bigger.
Maybe he'll be on our side.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Maybe he'll be... Hey, I've got it. What if he's on our side? You know, having a lion around might not be such a bad idea.
So we're keeping him?
Of course. Who's the brains in this outfit?
Yes, Timon, only you are the brains in this group. They sense something wrong with our hero and do their best to help him cope. They decide to teach him something on dealing with the past, through the medium of song.
Hakuna Matata. It means no worries.
Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase.
Hakuna Matata. Ain't no passing craze.
It means no worries for the rest of your days. It's our problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata.
Putting aside how the phrase itself has recently been trademarked by Disney, which sparked a lot of controversy, this is meant to be Simba's pick-me-up after the trauma from losing his father. Besides, he's no longer in a place where anyone can find him, so it's about time to live free and chow down on bugs.
What's that?
A grub. What's it look like?
Ew, gross.
Tastes like chicken.
Realistically, while the bugs provide protein, Simba would have to eat about 6 grubs per minute without sleeping in between. At this rate, our hero will keel over from malnourishment. But plot armor allows him to grow up and sport the voice of Matthew Broderick. Not during the song sequence though. For now, it's Joseph Williams holding down the fort.
Means no worries for the rest of your days.
It's our problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata.
Meanwhile, at Dead Man's Pride Rock, Zazu starts singing for King Scar and makes a meta joke.
It's a small world after all.
No, anything but that.
Even Disney finds that ride shameful. It's also from this point on that Scar loses that gravitas and charisma that got him so far to begin with. He was once cunning and somewhat menacing, but now he's starting to become a weenie. But that's not Simba's problem, even though he still feels some residual guilt for what he might have done. And if you look close enough, the grass spells out SFX. These same grass blades reach Rafiki, who has been sitting on his hands for most of the film. He uses some shaman concoctions and determines that Simba is alive all along. Meanwhile, Scar did mention that the lionesses would be hunting. It was only a matter of time before some predator found this place. Luckily, Simba is here to rescue them.
Don't worry, buddy. I'm here for you. Everything's gonna be okay. Get her. Bite her head.
Simba! Wait! It's Nala! Don't you recognize her?
Sora, you don't exist in this universe. But you are right, that's Nala, all grown up.
Nala? Is it really you?
Who are you?
It's me, Simba.
How did you...
Where did you come from?
This is cool. It's great to see you.
Oh,
Hey,
it's great to see
what's
you.
going on here?
What are you doing here?
Hey, what's going on here?
We're having a reunion! Imagine the questions she must have though. But she mostly tells him that Scar lied about his death and that he's taken over since then. She tries to get Simba to come back and claim his rightful place as the real king, but our hero understandably refuses given his possible role in his father's death. But before resolving that conflict, the movie has gone on long enough without a song. Now let's mix it up by having a love song, which Timon is not excited for.
Disasters in the air.
Like Circle of Life, this song also got an Elton John version, although the movie version uses the vocals of one Crystal Edwards. It's meant to be like traditional Disney love songs, but I sense more creativity with how the two lines act and move around one another. And then they banged. They continue talking about what happened back home, but Simba still raises the same objections that he made in their first conversation. He gets all defensive about wanting to stay here and not take responsibility back home.
Listen, you think you can just show up and tell me how to live my life? You don't even know what I've been through.
I would if you just tell me.
Forget it.
Fine.
I wonder how different the later scenes would be if he did tell her the truth. That actually is part of something else I have an issue with. But for now, Rafiki shows up. How he managed to find him is beyond me, but he's here to spout advice that's just appropriate for the situation.
That's not my father. It's just my reflection.
No. Look hard. You see, he lives in you.
Father?
I'd throw in that Simpsons clip, except I don't think I could work my editing wizardry here. It is an important moment, though, where Mufasa tells Simba that he has to take his place as the rightful ruler. But that's not the important part of this conversation.
I know what I have to do, but going back means I'll have to face my past. I've been running from it for so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. Ah! You see?
And that's a really good lesson. Rather than run away from your troubles, you should own up to them. Learn from your mistakes to avoid repeating them in the future. And even if Simba was genuinely responsible for his father's death, doing something about it is a chance to prove that he can change for the better. It's also an opportunity to convince the rest of the royal family to welcome him back into the fold, to give him another chance. Time for more triumphant music!
Hey! Where are you going?
I'm going back!
Come on! Get out of here!
We take a short break where Nala talks with Timon and Pumbaa, then they learn from Rafiki that...
The king has returned.
And back to the majesty of Simba running. He returns home to find it a barren wasteland, but even though he had a head start, Nala and the others have already caught up to him?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
So how are they gonna get past all those hyenas?
Come on, Timon. You guys have to create a diversion.
What do you want me to do? Dress and drag and do the hula? Wow! If you're hungry for a hunk of fat and juicy meat, eat my buddy Pumbaa here because he has a treat.
I know, breaking the mood and all. But when you're a dedicated comic relief, every waking moment feels like a chance to inject humor and joy, damn it! At least Simba's mother has more dignity than Scar.
They're not doing their job.
Scar, there is no food. The herds have moved on.
No, you're just not looking hard enough.
It's over. There is nothing left. We have only one choice. We must leave Pride Rock.
We're not going anywhere.
Then you have sentenced us to death.
Then so be it.
You can't do that.
I am the king. I can do whatever I want.
If you were half the king Mufasa was, you
I'm
would
10 times the king Mufasa was.
So it's looking like Simba is gonna kick Scar's ass, but it also leads to the one problem that I have regarding Simba's arc. Scar is about to play his ace by revealing to everyone what Simba did to Mufasa. You would think that our hero would steel himself for this moment, to face the accusation with dignity and grace, to prove to the other lions that he can take responsibility for such a horrendous lapse of judgment and be a better person because of it. Instead...
It's true.
You see, he admits it.
No, it was an accident.
If it weren't for you, Mufasa would still be alive. It's your fault he's dead. Do you deny it?
No.
Then you're guilty.
No, I'm not a murderer.
If he didn't start making excuses about the death, it would have solidified the earlier lesson. But it's okay, since Scar gives himself away while trying to push his nephew over a cliff. It just seems like they negated one lesson just to clear Simba of any wrongdoing, when they didn't need to. We don't need a protagonist with a faultless record, really.
Tell my tale to those who ask. Tell it truly, the evil deeds, along with the good, and let me be judged accordingly. The rest is silence.
Regardless, Simba bounces back and gets Scar to admit what he did in front of everyone. Thus, we get an all-out war between the lions and hyenas. Even Timon and Pumbaa get involved, but my favorite is Rafiki kicking ass. Oh, and this bit with Pumbaa is good too.
Who's the pig? Are you talking to me? Uh-oh, they called him a pig. Are you talking to me? Shouldn't have done that. Are you talking to me? Now they're in for it. They call me Mr. Pig! Take that, you
Now for the final showdown between Simba and Scar. Scar, now a pitiful shell of himself, tries shifting the blame on the hyenas. Simba decides to be a mature adult and only forces his uncle into exile. This seems to calm things down, until Scar decides to cheat by spraying ash into our hero's eyes. Considering how fast cats can swipe, it makes sense to slow it down a bit. The scuffle leads to Simba kicking Scar off the cliff, and we get one of the more gruesome deaths in a Disney film when you really think about it.
Enemy. Yeah, that's what I heard. Ed?
No, let me explain. No, you don't understand. No, I didn't mean... No.
The law of the jungle is eat or be eaten, and Kimba's not here to save you. With Scar's death, Rain returns to the land. Simba nuzzles a bit with Nala before taking his place as the rightful king. Now, I'm not going to say the film is overrated, even when accounting for the aforementioned controversies and some puzzling writing with the story, but otherwise, some of the lessons involved, the visuals, and voice acting are all top-notch. Learning from the past and being accountable for your actions is important in growing up as an individual. It just sucks that the film brushes it off with how Simba acted at that one moment. It also doesn't help that Scar goes from being a sly and cunning villain to a sniveling wimp who blames everyone around him. It's not totally unforeseen though, like how some rulers fall into complacency once they reach the highest levels of authority, forgetting the qualities and skills that got them to such a prestigious position in the first place. I can't say the story is groundbreaking, but it's so compellingly told that it doesn't really matter. Everyone, from the dedicated animators to the voice actors, gave so much life and personality to these characters that you can't really look away. Critics and filmgoers alike found The Lion King to be something special. It currently sits at 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it led to a plethora of spin-offs and even a remake film. It was the highest grossing animated film in its time, and even after all these years, it's the 12th highest in that category. It's telling how the remake is now the highest grossing animated film despite lacking the charm and artistry of the 1994 original, but that's the lasting cultural significance, power, and legacy of this movie. Some last thoughts before I end this special. After watching the movie in preparation for this video, I kept thinking about the people who brought The Lion King to life. Together they ended up contributing to a beloved work that would go down as one of the hallmark achievements in cinematic history. But perhaps it's unfair to call them first-timers like I've done here, because before 1994, they must have followed the character arc of Simba in their own little ways. They must have been involved with some artistic projects that molded them, shaped them, and honed them. They won some and they lost some, but above all, they learned to grow and mature as professionals, and maybe even as people. And by the time Disney called them to work on a movie about some animals in the African wilds, they were ready to show the world what they were truly capable of, and we were all the better for it. I would like to think that we have our own long-running character arcs, that we are not fully formed from the moment we drew breath into the world. Knowing this, all I ask is that you never end your lifelong journey of figuring it out on who you are and what you want to become. It doesn't matter whether you think you have one true self waiting to be discovered, or whether you believe that your true self shifts in accordance with the passage of time. Just strive, seek, and find. The doing is the important part here. Failures be damned. And if something seems to be working, take the next chance. Then the next. On and on till all the chances are spent. To stop growing and learning is not a fate ordained by the stars. It is a choice we make by our own will. And should you succeed in growing and finding yourself, know that the rewards don't just accrue to you. The world would be a drearier place if it didn't witness that angel inside, and by shining your inner light for all to see, you give others the courage to do the same. And with that, I'm the Media Hunter. Media's my prey, and reviewing them my way.
Hakuna Matata. Hakuna.